We shall commence this module by discussing about the social forestry. Social forestry is afforestation of all lands other than croplands that are available outside the forest areas with the goal of meeting the requirement of ecological and environmental security and day-to-day needs of the rural population. Social forestry aims to create forest on any available lands which are not being used for other purposes with the help of society for satisfying the expectations of society so that the requirements of the society which are met so far through natural resources or forest may be fulfilled by these forests and pressure on natural forest is thereby reduced. Thus, social forestry can be described as forestry of the people, for the people and by the people. In fact, social forestry combines idle land, labor and water resources for optimum production of firewood, fodder, food, manure and small constructional timber. As such, it essentially involves a kind of monolithic integration of forestry, agriculture and animal husbandry. The term social forestry was first mentioned in the 9th Commonwealth Forestry Congress by Mr. Westoby at Delhi in 1968. As per the definition given by him, social forestry means a forestry which has a purpose of continuously providing protection and recreation benefits to the community. Social forestry signifies the regulation and preservation of forest and afforestation on deserted lands with the objective of assisting in the social, rural and environmental development. Plantation of trees outside the forest cover was firstly attempted in United Province in the year 1935. Tree plantation on private farm bunds was attempted in 1952. In the year 1973, National Commission on Agriculture emphasized the necessity for man-made forest beyond the existent forest. After 1975, social forestry plantation was initiated on a huge scale in other Indian states with many international institutions providing the financial help. In the year 1976, the National Commission on Agriculture, Government of India, initially mentioned the term social forestry. A social forestry project to take the burden off the forest and to make use of all the barren and unused land was needed. There was a need to plant trees and plants along the agricultural fields. The plantation was carried out in the government's wasteland, panchayat land and the common land. Social forestry also provides timber, fodder, fuel, wood, etc. by persuading the common men to raise plantation. It hence relaxes the burden on the conventional forest cover. With the commencement of this scheme, the government formally recognized the local communities' rights to forest resources and is now revitalizing the rural participation in the regulation of natural resources. The necessity for a social forestry scheme was sought since a major portion of the rural Indian population still significantly depends on wood, fuel and other biomasses for their cooking and heating activities. This demand for fuel, wood is not going to come down, but the area under the forest will get reduced further due to the increasing population and growing human activities. Still, the government took up the projects for a period of 5 years and handed them over to the village panchayats, that is village councils, to manage for themselves and generate products or revenues as they thought fit. After studying this module, you shall be able to know about social forestry, know about the goals of social forestry, know about the significance and need of the social forestry program, know about the various types of social forestry, know about what problems the social forestry programs has faced. Let us understand the objectives of social forestry. Improve the environment for protecting agriculture from unfavorable climatic factors. Increment in the supply of wood fuel for domestic use, small timber for rural housing, minor forest produce for local industries and fodder for livestock. Improve the natural beauty of the landscape, evolve recreational forests for the benefit of rural and urban population. To provide employment opportunity and increase family income for alleviating poverty. Land rehabilitation, to enhance the production of fruits and thus add to the potential food resources of the country. To help in the creation of shelter belts across agricultural fields to increase their productivity. To preserve water and soil and to maintain ecological balance by enhancing biomass generation. To provide a congenial environment to the tribal and to help them to preserve their cultural recognition as their life and culture are intimately related to forest. Providing shade and ornamental trees for the landscape. To include the consciousness and love of trees among the people. To relieve pressure on reserved forest. Finally, its objective is to raise the standard of living and quality of life of the rural and the urban people. Moving on to discuss the advantages or importance of social forestry. The first one is increasing the forest areas and restoring ecological balance. This is obtained through the following points. Moisture conservation. Trees extract water from the lower soil strata and bring it to the upper layers through long tap root system, and also trees control water evaporation. Soil conservation. Trees contribute to check the erosion by water and wind. Natural habitat conservation. Trees provide habitat to many birds and animals, some of which are agro-friendly. The second is meeting the fundamental rural needs. Social forestry always tries to satisfy the fundamental rural needs, signifies as 5 F's: fuel, food, fodder, fertilizer and fiber. The large-scale depreciation of easy-to-access forest has resulted in acute scarcity of fuel, wood and fodder. A quite disturbing fact is that the deficiency in fuel wood is satisfied by using cow dung cakes, thus wasting a rich and cheap resource of manure. Trees also supply the basic material for various small and village industries through small timber and minor forest produce. Third is affirming better land use. Social forestry checks soil erosion, facilitates reclamation of marginal lands, checks waterlogging and brings about monolithic integration of forestry, agriculture and animal husbandry. This leads to a balanced and a viable use of the land. Fourth is generation of employment. Social forestry activities are capable to improve the employment situations in rural areas, especially during the lean agricultural seasons. This leads to the stabilization of income of the less developed sections of the society. Fifth, controlling pollution. Trees are also known to absorb harmful gases and release oxygen. This helps to check air pollution, specifically in the urban areas. Apart from the above mentioned advantages, social forestry provides the below mentioned benefits as well. Sixth, reduce the surface runoff water and sedimentation of reservoirs, rivers, streams, etc. Seventh, facilitates the infiltration of water, thus supporting in the maintenance of the groundwater table. Eighth, helps in increased rainfall through transpiration. Ninth, help in the environmental conservation by absorption of carbon dioxide and release of oxygen. 10th, helps in the development of cottage industries. Next, we shall understand the types of social forestry. Social forestry scheme is classified into 4 groups: farm forestry, community forestry, extension forestry and agroforestry. We will now learn each of them in detail. Farm forestry. Nowadays, both the commercial and non-commercial farm forestry is being encouraged in almost every country where social forestry programs have been endorsed. In order to satisfy the domestic needs of the family, the individual farmers are being persuaded to plant trees on their own farmland. It is not always imperative that the farmers grow trees for fuel, wood, but quite often they are interested in growing trees without any economic motive. The other motives can be providing shade to the agricultural crops, working as wind shelters, conserving soil or using wasteland. Next is community foresting. Another scheme that has been taken up under the social forestry program is community forestry, which includes raising trees not on the private land, rather on the community land, contrary to the farm forestry. All these programs have been started keeping in mind the objective of providing for the whole community and not for any particular individual. The government bears the duty to provide fertilizers, seedlings, but the community is required to bear the accountability of tree protection. Common land, being everyone's land, is very easy to exploit. Over the last 20 years, large-scale planting of eucalyptus as a fast-growing exotic has occurred in India, making it a part of the drive to reforest the subcontinent and to adequately supply timber for tribal and rural communities under the profit of social forestry. The next is extension forestry. Extension forestry signifies the plantation of trees along the roads, canals and railways and includes on wastelands, thus increasing the boundary of the forest. Under this project, wood lots in the village common lands, government wastelands and council lands have also created. It is also referred to as rural forestry. Extension forestry encompasses forestry on community and panchayat lands, degraded forest roads and railway sites, canal banks, etc. to satisfy the demand of the rural people. It also encompasses the reclamation of delinquent areas bearing marks of mining and road construction, quarrying, brick manufacture, lime burning, etc. In farm forestry, the ownership of land is ordinarily individual, while in extension forestry, it is commercial. The ethics of extension forestry are bound to induce public interest in the well-being of public-owned forest. Agroforestry. Agroforestry signifies the plantation of trees across agricultural borders and on the marginal private lands, combining agricultural crops. Agroforestry can be thought of as a sustainable land use system which protects or improves the entire yield by adjusting food crop along with the forestry and livestock breeding on the same portion of land, using management practices which take care of the social and culture characteristic of the regional people and the economic and ecological conditions of the regional areas. Social forestry schemes exercised throughout the nation have made a considerable impact on overall forest area in a short span of time. Let us now discuss the problems in the social forestry program. The first one is social forestry program has totally neglected the prime goal of affirming the rural households access to fuel, wood, and fodder for the domestic consumption. In these areas, children and women spend their maximum time to collect the fuel wood. Second problem is, in social forestry programs, hardy exotic species of trees like eucalyptus was planted on a huge scale on farmlands and public lands, which has lowered the groundwater table and also deterred the growth and colonization of native plant species. The third problem is, social forestry has failed to involve the landless in afforestation. As a matter of fact, it has aggravated poverty and unemployment in rural areas. The fourth problem is, social forestry did not involve women who collect fuel for the family every day. It has also not involved the tribal who are deeply concerned with the protection and promotion of forest. Fifth problem is, social forestry program fails to check cattle browsing and grazing and cutting of trees. Sixth problem is concerned with social forestry program which has only benefited the bigger farmers. Let us now summarize what we have learnt in this module. Forests not only contribute to the upkeepment of ecological stability but also occupy an important place in the economic development of a country. In India, forests occupy about 19% of the entire geographical area. This brings the per capita forest area to a meager 0.10 hectare, which attributes to one of the lowest in the world. The faster destruction of natural forest has made this problem more acute. Therefore, in order to remedy this situation, the National Commission on Agriculture in the year 1976 recommended developing social forestry. The notion of social forestry, which seeks to aim at the production of fuel wood, fodder and small timber for the local communities, calls for a grassroots initiative in which local communities have to be both the implementers and beneficiaries of the program. The Forest Department and other external agencies are required to provide only consultancy and support. Active involvement of local population is central to this concept. The success of social forestry schemes depends on recurring grants of financial aid from both the central government and the states. Intensive propaganda through the mass media to get the full public support is also very essential. For a determined adoption of the schemes on private or communal lands, economic incentives will also be helpful. These inter alia will include tax exemptions, partial or wholesale relaxation in wealth and income tax laws, granting subsidies for planting trees, supplying seeds at no cost or at a nominal cost, technical aid, spreading awareness and providing training on marketing trends and organization of forest cooperatives.